Hi, thanks for joining. We'll get started in about 3 minutes, just giving some people time to pop on in. Give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, I guess we'll get started. So thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Aaron Acosta and I lead product marketing for our Places product here at Foursquare. And today we're really excited to discuss our Foursquare Places API. So in the next few minutes, we'll discuss how it empowers developers to build engaging user experiences powered around our POI. This is going to cover really cool things like place search, autofill, and we're going to look at some real life examples of how our API is currently being used by some of our customers. And then from there, we'll pass it over to some demos that are currently live on our website, and we'll show you how you can actually access these and play with it yourself. And then as far as any links go, after this webinar, you will receive an email that's going to have links to this where you can access it and play with it yourself, or get started on our dev site and actually run some real API calls. So with that being said, here's our agenda and introductions. So here we have Josh Robbins and Rose Garay, who lead our developer products here at Foursquare. They are in-house API experts, and they'll be more than happy to take over from here and tell you everything about our API. So I guess I'll kick it over to Josh first.
Great, thanks, Aaron. If you want to click to our next slide. And so, as Aaron said, I'm Josh Robbins. I'm a product manager here at Foursquare, and I primarily focus on our APIs and basically all the offerings and solutions that we can help you as developers build using our APIs and our SDKs. And so, next slide, please. And so before we kind of dive into, what is the Foursquare offering, I figured it'd be a really good opportunity here to kind of level set with the group and just kind of get on the same page in terms of what are we talking about? What exactly is autocomplete? And then we'll also talk what are Foursquare APIs? But autocomplete, you can think of this as a solution that companies like Foursquare or even Google sell that provide type ahead suggestions for your end users. So you can imagine if you're going to Google Maps, for example, and you start to type in like a bus stop name or your favorite coffee shop name, it'll start to show you a drop down of kind of suggestions, right? It'll suggest to you like, oh, you are searching for the Starbucks near you. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here, kind of just defining this space. This is autocomplete. We're talking about providing type ahead suggestions for points of interest, or as we lovingly call it at Foursquare, places data. And then we're also kind of talking about autocomplete as it pertains to address data and cities and locales and other things that people might search for in a location context. And ultimately, what we're really talking about here is giving you more capability in terms of making it easier for your users to search for real world locations in real time. And so next slide, please. And so with this, maybe just going over two pretty general high level examples, we have Uber, for example, who uses an autocomplete within their flow. If you're trying to request a ride, you might type in, if you're based in Los Angeles, you might type in Union Station and a drop-off location, and you can see the drop-down populate with autocomplete results. And so that's really what we're talking about here today. And next slide, please. And similarly with Nike, if you were to purchase new shoes and check out through their flow, they do have an address autofill that is data that's provided through an autocomplete solution also. And so here we see in this GIF, we see a drop-down populate as you begin to type in the street address. And next slide, please. And so those are really two general use cases for an autocomplete solution. And so now we'll kind of dive into, what does Foursquare offer? What is the Foursquare autocomplete? And so we're still talking about the same exact feature at a baseline level here. We're talking about a location-based search engine that provides you with data from our POIs as well as global addresses. But really the key differentiator here in what we offer to you as developers is that we're offering this solution that is powered by Foursquare's technology and our data. So our autocomplete is, you can think of it as a standalone API that is offered within our Places API suite today. If you were to check us out online, subscribe to our Places API, you would immediately get access to our autocomplete. And yeah, I don't want to spoil too much about the integration piece because that's where Rose is going to jump in. But that's really what we're talking about today. And so I'll hand it off to Rose. She will kind of walk us through some key examples, and we'll take it from there.
Great, thank you, Josh. Hi everyone, I'm Rose Garay. I'm the product manager for developer experience. So I work closely with Josh and the API team, and essentially I make sure really that our tools are easy to access and easy to build with. So how would you use autocomplete, right? We've actually built out these two API autocomplete demos to help developers get started and actually give you design and coding best practices for some of the core use cases around autocomplete. So these are actually available now. If you head to our developer docs under the Places API section, you should see the local search map and the address form autofill. And these two also include code snippets, right? So I mentioned design and coding best practices so that anyone with an API key can copy and paste, even click on a JS Fiddle link and have these demos running in your local environments. So I'll go over what those two demos are. Next slide, please. And the first is the place search and map demo. So you can see here with the screenshots, there is a map with a search input box. You type in the name of the POI or the venue that you're looking for, and then the dropdown populates with the suggestions closest matching to your input. And then a very simple, once you make your selection, you see a simple information box that pops up with a photo, an address, and the rating for the place that you chose. So it's a quick and simple example of how you might use autocomplete combined with a map for a really cool user experience. And I just want to highlight here that this sample is meant to be pretty simple. Ratings, photos, and addresses are not the only thing that you can get with the Places API. You can actually get so much more. You can get hours, tips, even more photos. So this is just meant to show like a simple use case and highlight how autocomplete works. In the next sample, in the next slide here, we have the address form autofill. So very similar to the Nike example that Josh mentioned. You can start to type in your address, select your input, and then see that everything is filled out correctly. And again, we have the code sample, the code snippet for you to very easily recreate this in JavaScript. So check out those demos again in our developer docs. And next I'll be talking about how you want to be integrating autocomplete. So we've got some best practices for you to keep in mind as you're looking through the docs and thinking about developing with autocomplete. First things first, for the optimal user experience, we recommend that every keystroke is equivalent to an autocomplete call, right? So that drop-down list should be changing as users give you more information, more input into that search box. The next best practice is to keep in mind that autocomplete should probably require 2 steps. In the screenshot here, you're seeing the results of the autocomplete call. So that's step number 1. You'll actually get enough information for you to populate something like the dropdown. You'll get all of the place names, you'll get an address, and a Foursquare ID. But that dropdown itself doesn't give you the full details, right? Once you make that selection, your user might want to know, oh, what are the ratings or what are the hours? And so the second step that's integral to the autocomplete experience is making sure to go ahead and get details for that selected input. And the way that you can do that is by making a place search call, or making a place details call, or an address details call. So those are the 3 compatible endpoints. And that in itself kind of wraps up your autocomplete or your search session, right? So from the very beginning, as a user starts to type in their character inputs, all the way to selecting the best option in the dropdown, and then finally displaying details about that selected option. So this unique search session kind of leads me to the next point of using session tokens. So we want to bill you for each search session. We actually encourage you to make that resulting place search or address search call, because if you include this session token for each unique search, the autocomplete call itself is free, and then we are only charging you for the resulting place search or address search call. So these should be uniquely generated 32 character long strings that you pass in as a query parameter to both of the calls. You don't have to make a second call if you don't want to, but in that case, you wouldn't put in a session token and we would bill you for each of the autocomplete calls. So it's really in your best benefit to use session tokens, and you can look to the code snippets for how you might generate that and some best practices around it. And then the final best practice is just to keep in mind where you want your results based off of. So by default, we will, if you don't tell us otherwise, we will look at the IP address of the call, of the API call, and look for results around there. But if you would like to tell us where to search specifically, you can input as a query parameter the lat long of the location, based off of your user. And you could also optionally input a radius for us to define the search. So those are just some best practices to keep in mind. As always, check out the developer docs. We've got a technical guide coming out today with more information. So it's just an overview of how you might want to think about using autocomplete. And then with that, I'll hand it off to Aaron for next steps and the Q&A session.
Cool. Next steps. So real simple. Head to our developer site at developer.foursquare.com. Get started. It's free. We give a $200 monthly credit. So it's just a really good chance for you to actually get your hands on our product and learn from it or integrate it in any of your web or app experiences. We'll send out links after this, but talk to us if you have feedback. We are always receptive towards any feedback on our products. And with that being said, we'll open up for Q&A. And I guess I will start off with a question for Rose. What else can our API do besides these two functionalities?
Yeah, definitely. So it's not just autocomplete, place search and place details. There's different features such as you can search by a telephone number and find all of the matching venues or POIs with that telephone number. You can also kind of use our snap to place technology with the places nearby call and detect the closest venue or POI to you. So you might think about using that for a check-in use case or a geotagging use case. Could think of the example of you're writing a post on Twitter and you want to geotag where you are, where you sent that post from, or even sharing your location on WhatsApp. You can look for venues near you to accurately share where you are to a friend. So I would highly recommend that you look through our API Explorer, read through all of the available APIs. It's more than just the autocomplete and place search.
Cool. And are these code samples free to download, or is there a fee associated with each of them?
So the code samples are completely free. We'll also be posting them in our GitHub for anyone to clone and take a look at. But if you go live there now, you should see the JavaScript, HTML, and CSS that you can copy and paste.
Okay. And we have one other question coming in. How does pricing work for these APIs, and how's it different from the Google Places API?
Yeah, I could take that one. Thanks for the question. And so our pricing model is based off of a rate card per 1,000 calls. So we do have a pricing webpage. We can also send that out via like the resources and links after this call. But essentially, it's, as I said, per 1,000 calls, there's a rate, like let's assume like $5 per 1,000 calls. And then if you were to make that 1,000 calls within this first month of you signing up for an account, that would get deducted, or that would deduct from the $200 in free monthly credits that Aaron had mentioned. And so definitely, we definitely are kind of giving our community this ability to make a bunch of free calls and really just test out our technology and see if it fits for them. And so definitely encourage you to do the same.
Cool. I guess we'll leave it open for a couple more seconds if there's any last questions. Okay, well, I guess that's all the questions for today. Yeah, okay, I guess that's all our questions. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email. Oh, all right, we got one question coming in. Is the API limited to JavaScript?
Yeah, so it is not. You should be able to make calls in whatever language of your choosing. It's just that these demos were built with vanilla JavaScript. You can certainly try whatever language you want, and we are planning on putting out more demos in different languages. The API Explorer page within our dev docs can also show you some automatically generated code snippets for the language of your choosing.
Sweet. I guess we'll give it a couple more seconds now.
Yeah, I think also building off of what Rose said, if for the person who asked that question, if you do have a preferred language and you don't see that in our code samples or other places on our developer documentation, please let us know. Like, we would love to build out tooling, resourcing, content for people who are invested in using our products. And so, we kind of, as Rose said, we started with JavaScript because it is, one of the most popular web languages today, but that doesn't stop us from, adding Python samples or Ruby or, anything else that could be helpful to you. So please, yeah, let us know. We're always open to product feedback.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any questions at all, this isn't the end. You could feel free to reach out to us and we'll happily get back to you. Thank you for your time, and it's been a pleasure hosting you all.
Thank you. Bye.